Yeah, I figured I'd start my stream with a little bit of guitar. If any of you guitar lovers out there, this is Martin D18. It's a 96 model. Been kind of beat. I use it with my band. Uh, I like it. It's pretty cool. Best sounding acoustic guitar I've ever had. But anyways, I'm coming live today to talk to you guys about Indiegogo campaigns. Running an Indiegogo campaign can be stressful. It can be, a lot of pressure and a lot of hassle. And if you don't have your fan base built up, then you'll kind of fall flat. You can't just slap Comicsgate on it or Indie Comics or whatever and expect it to take off and do well. You've got to gain some interest ahead of time. And I'm just going to, tell you guys what I did and how I got things going the way that I did. I mean, we're not funded yet, but we're almost halfway there, and we're not even halfway through our campaign yet. So I'm pretty proud about that. But what we did first thing is I started sharing artwork about a month out. Oh, we got somebody in the chat. It's old Cal. He says, "Sorry, I can't be on, but I'm here." It's cool, man. It's cool. We'll get you on sometime later. But anyways, before we ever, like a month and a half before I ever planned on starting the campaign, I started sharing artwork. I took the character design, posted online. Then I started posting pages online and started talking about the character and the story, sharing, everything that I could. Started making YouTube promo videos and posting those, just building up interest. So by the time that we actually started the campaign, we had somewhat of a fan base, and you need that fan base. You need people that'll share all your material and recommend it to their friends and their family. We like I was saying, we're almost halfway funded. Let me go ahead and do some screen sharing here, and I'll show you where we're at so far. Now, I ain't got the right page pulled up. Here we go. We are 43% funded. That's out of $3,000. That's with 64 backers. Now, a lot of campaigns have a lot more money, but if you look at their backers, they've only got half the backers that I do. And that's where we're keeping our prices low. We want, I listened and everybody was talking about things just being expensive and needing, cheaper books because they just can't afford to back all these books they want to back. And so, I thought, well, there's a hole in the market. I'll go in with a cheaper book. But that means we have to sell more books than people that sell them for $15, $20, and $25. We have to work twice as hard to get as many people. And I was hoping that the low price would help with that too. But we've started offering some secret perks. So if you don't follow me on Twitter,
follow me on Twitter at DG310 because I post a lot of updates there. And today I've posted one of the secret perks. And the secret perk will get you a little bit more stuff than just the regular perks that we've got listed. Okay, so I told you before you ever start your campaign, put stuff out there, pictures, promos, talk about your character. And I know it seems like you don't want to annoy people, but the more you post, the more people will see it. And if they don't want to like it or share it, they'll just ignore it. But if it catches their eye, you might have hooked a fan right there. So make sure that you keep posting material. But you need to grow your fan base as well. You need to make friends on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. Join some groups of like-minded people. You'll find a lot of people that are working on their own campaigns and working on their own books that really want to help. They'll help. If you need a colorist, they'll go, well, I can color something. I'll help this guy out. You need somebody to help you letter. You know, and then if they've already established a fan base, or they've got a lot of friends or a lot of followers, and they start sharing all your stuff, that's even more people you've connected to. So you can't just run in dry and think that everything's going to work out and everything's going to be great. And then you do have to sell yourself somewhat, and that's a little bit harder than some other things. Me, I'm not a good salesman. I can't convince people to buy things, but I can come on and I can be myself. And I've been told I'm a likable guy. I'm I'm just a regular old dude. I just do regular dude things. I'm not a terrible person. I try to be friendly to everybody I know. Just be yourself. That's one thing they tell you to be a salesman, but I think if you're yourself and you talk honestly and you're not putting on the car salesman thing, I think you'll do good. I've had a lot of people, just like-minded type people that because we have similar interests, um, they've decided, well, I'll check out Doug's stuff. He seems like a pretty cool guy. He's pretty reasonable, or he's pretty funny, or whatever. And then they start supporting us as well. So I think David's going to pop in here with me. So let me get him an invite really quick because we would love to have David on because we love that accent. He makes me sound smarter, and by that I mean he usually can put things in a way that doesn't sound so ignorant. So he should be joining us here in a moment. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and hit me up in the chat. Oh, we've got several dudes in here in the chat. We've got Aaron, we've got Marshall, Rex. Hey guys, I know a lot of people are struggling with their Indiegogo campaigns. I might have to put my headphones on if Dave's going to come in because I won't be able to hear him. So you get to see me with my big, giant, goofy headphones. But yeah, a lot of people are needing some advice because they don't know. A lot of guys think, "Hey, well, I'm Comicsgate. I've been supporting Comicsgate from day one. I'll just throw this hashtag on here, and everybody will come in and start throwing money at me." That's not how it's going to work. You've got to do the groundwork. You've got to lay it down yourself, and it really helps if you're not a terrible person. So, you guys got any questions there in the chat? Anything I can help you with? Am I working with Peter Samedi to do newsprint? I wish that I was. I know he was going to do the thing where you could jump on one of his print runs and he could get the book printed for you really cheap. But I think his massive influx of orders kind of slowed that down. Because when he got attacked, a lot of guys, a lot of Comicsgate and other people started supporting him. So he's not really got into doing the newsprint thing, getting other people in yet. I found a couple of print shops that will still do newsprint. So I'm going to get some samples from both of them and see which one I like the best. But I think newsprint is awesome. And then Rex here, let's see. He's got some recommendations for us. It says, my only recommendations to people for successful fundraising is to do so, number one, when there aren't a bunch of other similar campaigns in the same time period, and two, when people have plenty of money. He's exactly right. You don't, like, I know it's October, and my book is about a Native American who hunts down monsters, ghouls, and vampires and werewolves and such. So I felt like that was a good time for it. People more in the mood for things like that. But if there was other things in a similar vein, then I'm competing with that. And you really don't want to compete with that, especially if it's somebody who is well known and who has a huge body of work that people go, well, I'll definitely support this guy because nobody knows who Doug Garrett is. I've never even heard of that guy. He's just some. I looked at his YouTube video. He's just some goofy fat guy with a beard. Oh, we got somebody in here with us. I believe it's David. What's up, David?
I'm good. I'm good. I've just been, by pure coincidence, I was playing around with what do they call it, the avatars and things, to see what sort of picture I could put up instead of my face, because I'm sure not too many people want to see that.
Your face is not as terrible as mine, David.
We'll have a vote for that. but tomorrow, I think I mentioned to you, tomorrow night I'm going to go on a stream with some guys that are trying to sort of promote European books.
Yeah.
And they said they wanted to talk about all sorts of other things that I do as well. So I picked up the picture on my avatar there at the moment is a picture that an artist drew for me or painted for me for a novel that I'm writing, not a graphic novel, just a novel. And he's done some illustrations for it. And I thought, she's attractive. She's more attractive than me anyway. I'll put her on and see how that looks.
Well, it's a nice looking avatar. I like the artwork.
It's nice. The only ones I could find that were anything like me tended to be the monsters. So it was that or somebody female. So. Anyway, what have I missed?
Oh, nothing. I've just been given what little insight I have to running an Indiegogo campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been getting some questions in the chat about it. Aaron in the chat says, when you figure out the printers you like, would you be willing to share them in Mindy's group? And that's a definite yes. Anything that I find out, I will share them with everybody. I want everybody to be successful. We don't really have anybody but each other, so we need to help each other out most we can.
I think that's right. I mean, Mindy's group is a good one, and also the Comicsgate business group. They would be interested in that as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. If any of you guys are printing a book and you want to do full color, or even black and white, but not do newsprint, I had some ash cans printed up by Greco Printing, which is Comics Wellspring, and their stuff is really, really nice. So it's worth it's worth the price. So I'll highly recommend them if you're looking to do a modern style book. Okay, Cal, I will. Are you on Facebook, Cal? If you are, you need to send me a friend request, and I'll get you into the group. And if you don't have a Facebook, you need to start one because that's where all the good things are.
I think so. Like I've heard people say, I've never had this done, so I can't attest to whether it's true or not. But I have heard people say, I think that you could send the link to him by DM over Twitter.
Oh, I probably can.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard people say they've done that. I'm sure in the past, as a throwaway comment, Ethan or somebody has said, send it to me either as a DM over Twitter or I know he liked Facebook, or an email was his other option, but might be worth trying that if Cal doesn't already have a.
Yeah, he said he deleted his Facebook. He hated it, but he has an
Uh,
alternate one he can use. Yeah, so just find me. I'm Doug Garrett. You'll see my picture. It looks like my face right here. So I'll add you to the group. It's a pretty cool group.
so do a quick recap of what of the advice you've been giving that I've
Okay.
missed, because I'm going to need all this.
Well, like the first thing I told people was not to just start an Indiegogo. That
Mhm.
they needed to network and get some traction beforehand. You need to take artwork and share it. You need to try to make friends with like-minded people. Uh, the more artwork you have out there, the more people's going to see it, and it's going to draw interest. And I would take a month or two and just start talking about it ahead of time. I would
Yeah,
do YouTube live streams talking about it. Like you probably don't want to go on to a big live stream before you have something up because then you don't have anything, no website to go to. But start doing your own live streams. Start going on smaller live streams. Like you can come on with me. You can go on with the Needle Movers Society. They neither one of us have tons and tons of subscribers, but it's a start. You can get used to talking. You can make friends. And Skinny from the Needle Movers Society is really, really good about networking and helping people get their stuff out there. And
yeah.
also, oh, go ahead, David.
No, I was just going to add the one I'm doing tomorrow night. I think they have like 40 or 50 subscribers on their YouTube. I think the channel's actually called. I'm going to get this the wrong way around, I know, so I'll give it to you both ways. It's either called Lewis Michael or Michael Lewis. It's one of those two. He's the guy who's trying to bring together a lot of the European creators and fans who consider themselves Comicsgate. Um, and yeah, it's a small channel, but I mean, so were they all when they started. And for our purposes, when we're starting out as creators as well, it's a good place to start. Find your feet, learn how to do things, work your way up.
Exactly, because you never know how many people out there are trying to do the same thing you are. So if you
Mm,
start a channel or go on smaller channels and just make friends, that's the biggest part of it. You've got a network.
okay,
That's
that's point one. What was point two?
point.
I'm taking notes.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to read the chat and talk, so
Give priority to the chat. Give priority to the chat.
uh, I don't think we have any questions. Samuli that was on with us several days ago. He says, "We did I say that right? Did I say his name right?
It's how I say it, but that doesn't mean it's right.
I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. He's such a good guy. I hate to butcher his name, but he's saying we need to push this to the top. Sell shield contact. The newsprint was definitely a good idea. Definitely try to get EBS to notice this project. That will blow it up. Oh
Mm.
yeah, that's definitely good. You definitely need to try to start getting in contact with some of the bigger channels. Even
Yeah,
if go ahead,
I, I,
David.
I was going to say I agree. At some point in the campaign, even if it's not immediately, you're going to need a push from some of the big guys. But I don't think that negates the value of starting out with those where the subscribers are in tens, maybe a couple of hundred here and there. Work your way up to the John Malins who've got a couple of thousand, and then fingers crossed, hopefully one of the big guys, the really big guys like EVS will notice you. But yeah, you can't expect on day one to just jump into EVS's show.
Exactly. And I would recommend, before you even think of any of that, definitely share as much of your product on Twitter as you can. Talk
Mm,
about the story, talk about, and share the art. That's where people's going to get their interest initially is through something like that.
yeah. Yeah, the other thing, of course, if you are hoping to get onto EVS's show, and I'm sure 99.9% of us are, you've got to feel comfortable being on these things. You've got to come across as having a buoyant personality. It's not something I feel I've got. But I mean, as EVS has said many times, even to some of the more seasoned people he's had on there, I'm doing a show. Yes, I'll promote you, but you have to entertain my audience as well.
And he's exactly right. And
Yeah.
even if you don't feel like you're a very entertaining person, just come on and talk. Get used to talking to people. Get used to just talking, because people, you're selling yourself. You don't have to come on and make a clown out of yourself if that's not what you want to do. If you're not comfortable doing that, but people need to be able to relate to you in some way. Even if it's just you being goofy, and if you don't talk, or if you're just really 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 awkward, people's not going to get a chance to get to know you a little bit. And the more they get to know you, the more they're going to like you, and the more they're going to want to back something that you do.
Yeah, and I think that's the other advantage of starting out with the smaller channels as well, is you you get comfortable that way. You're not, while you're still finding your feet, you're not making a fool of yourself in front of in front of tens of thousands of people. You're just, okay, we're here, we're mates. There's just half a dozen of us. Let's chat, and I'll get used to doing this, and everybody helps each other get comfortable with this. It's new to all of us.
Yeah, definitely. And the second point I was saying, once you start promoting all your stuff online and everything, you need to find like-minded people. You need to start joining groups. You need to start sharing things. You need to just put yourself out there. And if you're in these groups and you need help, ask for help. There's so many people that will help you, and are willing to help and want to be a part of a project. Even if they've got a project going, they'll want to jump in and help you on a project, because that's how I met you, and that's how I met Cal. You guys just offered to help me when I needed help.
Yeah, I mean, ask. I mean, that's the thing that I think a lot of us apprehensive about doing to start with is actually just getting on into one of the chat groups and saying, I've got this idea, but I don't have an artist, or I don't have a colorist, I don't have a letterer. I could spend months searching elsewhere for one, but before I do, is there anybody in the group that can do this and wants to help out? Because there is a lot of talent in some of these Facebook groups.
Yeah, they're just kind of hiding there. They're just lurking around, and there's a lot of talent. And if you have an idea but you're not sure how to write a script, and you've got a story, you can still throw it out there. Somebody will help you write a script. There's so many talented people that want to be a part, that want to create, that you're going to find somebody. But once you start putting yourself out there and you have an online presence, you can't be negative towards your project. You can't be negative towards other people. If they come in and they don't like what you're doing, just let it roll off your back. Just take it. Just take it in stride and go. If you do something stupid, just let it roll off your back. Just keep going. We all do it. Most people aren't going to make a big deal about it, and the ones that do, they weren't going to support you anyway.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. It's because that's exactly how the pros weren't acting. It's because they were taking all criticism negatively that comics came into being in the first place. I mean, if only when Zach and Co. and I think what's his name, Douglas Ernst. I think even before Zach, I think he said he used to run a blog where he would criticize some of the either the behavior or the comics themselves. I mean, if only some of these pros early on had got into the habit of just saying, wow, sorry you didn't like that. Maybe you'll like the next issue, or yeah, you've got a point there. You either say, yes, you've got a point there, I'll see what I can do for the future, or you say, I'm sorry you didn't like that, but maybe the next issue will be more to your liking. I mean, it's not that hard. But when you actually turn around and start acting defensive and attacking the people that are talking to you, I mean, if nothing else, these people who are giving you criticism, they are comics fans. They are comics lovers, a lot of them. It's the people who don't say anything positive or negative you have to worry about. They just walk away and you don't even know why.
Yeah, a lot of people just are looking for somebody to tear down. So if it's good criticism, you need to take it, and
Mm,
if it's just somebody being hurtful, just let it roll off your back.
yeah,
For every
yeah.
bad, for every person that attacks you, for every bad thing that's said, I guarantee you, that you probably have 5 or 6 good ones.
Mm.
Even though the bad one always stands out and always, makes you feel bad, there's at least 5 or 6 people there saying, "Hey, I really like what you're doing. I want to be a part of this."
Oh, sadly, you could get 100 good ones and one bad one, and you will forget the 100 good ones, and that one bad one is going to stick like a knife in your chest and twist every time you remember it. But that's life. We're human. I used to go to. I'm writing. I think I mentioned as well as the comic that I'm doing. I'm trying to write a novel, and I went for several months, about 6 months. I went to a few meetings of a writers group locally, and we were each able to read out each meeting. You could read out a 10-minute excerpt from your book you were writing, and so I did that. Um, and I tried to discipline myself to get to, and then the rest of the group would critique it. And what the discipline you have to get into is to say, I won't respond. I will take everything they say and I'll write it down. And when I get home, I will see how much of it I agree with and how much I don't. But you don't respond there and then, because that's the worst thing you can do. Because all you're going to do is, again, you're going to close your ears to anything positive they say and take offense at anything negative they say. Now, when you get home and you do look at it, you might still disagree with it. You have to think about it. The lesson I tried to learn, I'm not saying I have, but the one I've tried to learn is listen to all criticism. It doesn't mean you have to accept all of it, but at least listen to it and ask yourself, is there something in what they're saying? Um, and I found on a couple of occasions that even though I was adamant that no, there wasn't when the criticism was given, that sticks in your mind. And maybe 6 months later, I've actually come around to thinking, hey, you know what? I can do something with that. It may not be exactly what they were saying, but there was a kernel of truth in there somewhere, which means I can not make the changes they were suggesting, but perhaps make other changes that I'm more happy with that will achieve the same effects. And sometimes these things have to stew in your brain before you can really appreciate them. For me, anyway.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I agree. Sometimes as a musician, I've kind of got used to people criticizing everything, because you're not going to meet people that like everything you do. But you should always, like you're saying, just take the criticism. Don't argue with it. Just let it go
Mm,
and think about it. Most people, if they're offering you criticism in a nice, well, that's one thing about today's generation. Just because they're criticizing you doesn't mean they're attacking you. And
mm.
you need to, like exactly like you said, you need to take that what they say, the way they said it, and just think about it.
Mm.
And
And
not every,
sometimes, and sometimes just turn that round another way. Even if they are attacking you or attacking the work, perhaps not you personally, then it's even harder. But even if they just say, excuse my language, but they turn around and say, well, this is shit. Instead of just saying, well, I'll just ignore that. Well, there's no reason why you shouldn't go back and say, oh, really? I'm sorry. What exactly didn't you like? And I've seen conversations go that way before, where then the person starts explaining what they meant, and you might still disagree with them, but they may be saying it for a reason that they're just not putting into words very well.
yeah, exactly. Uh, I'm going to go on to my next point here is once you start your Indiegogo campaign, don't plan then to be doing your work. You're going to be promoting every day, sharing stuff. Your head's not going to be in the game to write your script, to write your story. You need to have this done ahead of time. I honestly think the script needs to be done. If you're the one that's going to be promoting your story, then you need to have, and you're the writer, you need to have your script done. You need to have all the stories sorted out, and you need to have it handed off to the artist. The artist can go ahead and be working on it while you're promoting it. But if you're trying to do everything yourself, your head is not going to be in the game.
Mm. Also, you mentioned the script and the story. The other thing, which is going to fall 99% on the writer, is a short 1 minute elevator pitch. We've seen that on show after show where people have managed to get onto one of these shows and finally get their big break, and then Ethan or Edwin or somebody will say, "Okay, you got 1 minute. Sell me your story." In 1 minute, what am I going to say? I don't know. It's such a big story, and it goes here and it goes there, and either they finish after about 20 seconds, or they or they keep rambling and never actually sort of engage the audience. And you almost have to have 12 different pitches, like a 1 minute pitch and a 5 minute pitch and a 10 minute pitch. And where as soon as somebody says, okay, now sell it to me, this is how long you've got to be able to do it off pat. And I'm saying that knowing that I haven't done any of that with mine yet. But
Well,
I
the
think,
thing with me is sometimes I can get in there and I can just throw it down and I
yeah.
nail it, and then 5 minutes later you ask me and it's like my brain is fried.
Mm.
But like, see, that's what's hard for me because in music, I just record a song, write some lyrics or whatever, and the work speaks for itself. I don't have to go out and talk to people and be like, "Hey, give give a
Mhm.
give a speech about why you should listen to my song." I just throw it out there, and if people listen to it and they judge it on that. This, you're convincing people to come in and view your work, so you need to grab them before they ever hit your Indiegogo page because they might not even go look at your page. Just because you throw the link up there and everything doesn't mean they're going to go look at it. You've got to draw them in. You've got to pull them into your campaign. So if you don't have your pitch down and you don't have your artwork or anything like that, you're not ready at all.
Yeah. I mean, I think the again, I can remember I've heard several famous actors say this kind of thing where they go on chat shows and as a part of the audience, we just watch them and we think, oh, I wonder if they're an interesting person or not. And if they're not, oh, okay, they weren't as interesting as they thought they would be. Um, but what you hear them say time and time again is that I love making movies. I love acting. I love doing this. I go to work every day and I can put on a costume and be somebody else. But this is the part of the job I hate, going around chat shows, talking to people, trying to sell the film. I hate that. That's not what an actor's supposed to be doing. And I think to a large degree, that's kind of how we feel in the back of our minds. It's like, I just want to sit there and write this, or I want to sit there and draw that. I don't want to have to go out and talk to people and try and persuade them I'm a nice
Exactly.
person. But it is the same as it's part of the job for an actor to sell their film when they go on a chat show. It's part of our job to sell ourselves as well as the work when we do something like this on YouTube. And it's new to us. I think we've never had to do that before. Certainly, I mean, you look at the people at Marvel and DC, very clear they've never had to do this before.
Yeah. It's it's definitely something that's that just centers around this indie movement, having to sell yourself like that. It's a little hard, but I think people can do it.
Yeah,
When I
yeah, good.
well, I'll just go say, go ahead, David.
No, I was just going to agree with you. I think, but then I realised you had more to say, and I interrupted.
Well, I was just gonna say, like when I was in high school, we I took speech class, and I wish I'd have paid more attention about writing speeches and giving them, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway. That was a long time ago. Uh, you
Yeah,
pretty
I've been through several courses over the course of my, when I say courses, those are 1 day things over the course of my career in another field, shall we say, on public speaking. And I'll be honest, what, it doesn't help particularly at the time. What I have found helps is when you are doing it regularly on a daily basis, it just starts to get more and more natural and you become more and more comfortable with it. And then you stop doing it for 6 months. And as horrible as it is, the next time you go out, you've got to learn it all again. It's not like riding a bicycle. You have those same nerves, those same crises of confidence that we all have when you go out there again. But again, if you're doing it every day, it becomes easier. It does become more natural. And that's why it's important to start early.
I agree. Um, going back to the Indiegogo campaign,
Mm,
like I was saying, you need to have your script done. You need to have if you're the writer, you need to have everything done.
mm.
If you're going to be the artist, then I think what you need to do is set your campaign, get your promo material together, but you need to set your campaign far enough, set the fulfillment date far enough out where you can promote it, get it funded, and leave yourself enough time to work on it afterwards. Because you're as much as you want to, you're not going to get any work done during the campaign. You're going to be worried about people backing your campaign, and you're going to be worried about, going on live streams and whether or not you look like a moron on the internet more than you are getting work done.
Mm-hmm. And what people may not be aware of if they haven't done lots of comics before is once you hand your script off to the writer, it's easy to believe that you hand, sorry, as a writer, you hand your script off to the artist, and then you've done your part. You can go on Indiegogo, you can go on YouTube, you do your selling bit, and leave the rest of the comic will somehow magically happen because you've got the artist doing his stuff, you've got the letterist doing his stuff, you've got a colorist there doing his stuff. But it doesn't work like that. I mean, if you're the writer, then 9 times out of 10 for these projects, I would guess the writer is the um, it's like the producer and the director of a film. It's like you
Yeah.
still got to be involved and make sure all the pieces still keep ticking over, still keep happening, and that's as well as running the campaign, as well as making the YouTube appearances. There's a lot more to being the writer. Well, assuming you're the one who originated the project, there's a lot more to being the writer than just doing the writing, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Well, yeah, you're the project manager at that point. You got to make sure everybody's doing their job. You got to make sure everything's getting done. Like once Jeff gets a piece of artwork done, he sends it to me
Mm,
to make sure that it's right. To make sure that it's going with the story. And then it's my job to make sure that you and Cal, which I've been sending to you first usually, but it's my job to make sure you get it. And then after you're done, it's my job to make sure that Cal gets it. And then after all that's done, I've got to make sure I've got to do everything with the printing. I've got to all that.
mm.
So, but all the most of that'll happen after the campaign, hopefully.
The
Which I
printing
know,
side, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But still, I'm making sure that you guys are getting work and stuff to do.
Mm,
In the meanwhile, so you really got your hands full. If you're managing the project, you're going to have to kind of set aside some time to do that. If you want to
hmm
sit around and play Fortnite all day, like I've been known to do from time to time, it's going to cut into your Fortnite time. So you need to make sure you have the time set aside to work on all this stuff. Uh,
and
I
and it's
try.
and it's draining as well, isn't it? There's a nervous exhaustion that goes with it. And again, for somebody who hasn't been through this, I'm sure it sounds oh, I'm being very over dramatic, but no, you've put a lot of yourself into this project. You're checking that Indiegogo almost every 10 minutes, and if it hasn't moved, you think, why? What have I done? Am I ever going to see another contribution? And then you go onto a YouTube channel, and as I say, it's not something that you really thought you were signing up for when you started. And you're talking to all these people, and you come off emotionally drained, and then you have to start, in inverted commas, the real work.
Yeah, and that's something you need to plan for too. Is the emotional drainage. If you're a very emotional person, if you can't handle pressure and things like that, you probably need to find somebody that's going to help you out or to help you promote it and help you go on live streams. Because if you flip flop every day, if one day you're making posts about how you're a terrible person and you can't do anything, nobody's going to buy your book if you don't give them the confidence
I,
that you.
I think it's like I think it's like a band. Again, you don't see it so often now because the music industry has changed, as you say. But you think of the old bands in the well, from I suppose right back from the '60s onwards. But you typically for a TV interview, you'd have all 5 members of the band in the studio, and they'd all be sitting around, and most of them would just be lounging around. Certainly, the bass player and the drummer would be joking around and being clowns, and all the pressure, or the person doing all the speaking would usually be the lead singer and songwriter. It might be the lead guitarist, he might have something to say. Normally it would be the lead singer. All the emphasis is on him. And sometimes you think, well, he could have just gone into the studio on his own. He didn't need all these other guys there. But having them around you, having them giving you that moral support, I think that's important. And we saw that with the Jawbreakers campaign that Zach did. It was like when you went onto Twitter, it wasn't just Zach saying, "Hey, come buy this book, come please contribute to my campaign." Brett Smith was out there every single day, every half hour, John Malin was out there all the time. Everybody involved was pulling their weight and making sure that this every media platform you could find was just bombarded with this stuff and with positivity and with excitement. And we're quite lucky in that sense. In a comic, you have got 4 or 5 different people, well, at least 3, I would say, at least 3 different people on most projects to share that burden of publicity. And you have to get everybody pulling their weight, even if at the beginning you sort of said, well, person X is the most outgoing guy. He can be the face of this. Think of it like a band. He's going to need support. He can't do it all himself.
Yeah, I think that's really, don't you shouldn't try to take it all on yourself either. Even if you wrote the story and it's something you're really passionate about, you need to get somebody to back you up. It's better in the long run because it is gonna wear on you a little bit.
Yeah, and we all have our own strengths, and let's say the good thing about being part of a team is you can complement each other, and um, even something like a live stream like this. I mean, the worst thing you can have on a live stream, and I think all the big players and the small players will have found this. The worst thing you can have is dead air when suddenly everything goes quiet for it might only be 10 seconds, but that's an awful long time when this is like radio, that when you can't see anything happening. 10 seconds of dead air is a long time. Well, if you're sitting there on your own speaking, you might not even notice you've been quiet for 10 seconds. You're in your brain, you're just thinking, what's the next thing I'm going to say? If you've got 3, 4, 5 people on the stream, and I think that's why one of the reasons why even EVS, and he loves to talk, but I think even he likes it when he's got half a dozen people there, because it means that if the conversation suddenly dies, there's always somebody else ready to jump in and take that burden off him.
Yeah, you definitely like. I don't like to talk over people, and I like to give people the space to say something. But sometimes, like on here, it can get a little awkward. Somebody stops waiting for somebody else to talk. So it's takes something to get used to. And that's another thing. If you're going to get on streams, start with smaller streams or start with friends just to get used to it. It's a lot of fun, but it can be a little nerve wracking. You just need to get used to it.
Oh yeah, and the other side of the dead air question, I would argue, is as bad as it is to have X number of seconds of nobody saying anything. I have seen a few of the streams where they get up to, I know what the maximum is on Google Hangouts, but they seem to have about 12 people on sometimes. And then you can have the opposite problem, which is everybody talking at once. You feel like, no, if you're going to have more than 2 or 3, somebody needs to moderate. Somebody needs to be in charge to say, oh, I don't know how you can do it in practice, but somehow somebody needs to say, okay, it's your turn to talk now. It's your turn to talk now. The rest of you be quiet till he's finished.
Yeah, I was on a stream a while back, and there wasn't even that many people, but like one or two of the guys just, I guess he was afraid of not saying enough, and he just went on the whole time. And it's like,
You should have told me, Doug. I would have shut up.
No, it wasn't you. It was Cal. It was Cal. No, I'm kidding. It wasn't Cal either. But people just need to realize, hey, I need to let some of these other people talk a little bit. It's different. It's different than real life, and you just got to get a feel for it. Another thing I was going to bring up is when you put together your Indiegogo, ask as many people that you can trust to give it a look over and make sure everything, you don't have any typos and all that stuff, and everything makes sense, because you really need this not to look like you're a complete moron. I had to ask for some help. I asked David, and I asked several other people to give it a look over and make sure everything was good, and that all the perks and everything makes sense. Because you don't want people to get confused. You want them to be able to navigate everything
Oh,
as
this
easily
this
as
is this is
possible.
looking at the Indiegogo page itself. You mean? Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Just before you ever, actually launch it, get
Mm.
your page ready, and get people to look over it and help you out with it. And something that I've had problems with, and I like telling stories. I like writing stories and all that, but just writing a tagline, or the line that actually sells it, the line that you see, it needs to make sense. And I have a bad problem with keeping it vague because I don't want to give the story away. It's like, well, I don't want to give the story away, so I'll keep it vague. And in my mind, I can see the story. So even though it's vague, I know what's going on. For some reason, I expect other people to read my mind, and your 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 tagline needs to really pull people in. And I'm actually, as we speak, I have been rewriting mine to try to get more people
Mhm.
interested. Uh, I was been chatting with some other guys who are writers, and it always helps to get an outside opinion, get somebody looking at it, and don't take what they say personally, because they're just trying to help you do better.
Yeah, and get as many of them as you can, as much feedback as you can. I mean, for the novel I'm writing, it is turning out to be far longer than I anticipated, unfortunately. Um, I'm about two-thirds of the way through, and when I reached the halfway point, it was about 100,000 words I had done. And that's just to put that into perspective. They tend to say that most novels tend to be sort of 75 to 100,000 words. And I was at the halfway point with 100,000 words. So it's got out of control slightly. But one of the things I did, I thought, okay, I've got to, although it's not finished, so a lot of the feedback I get is not going to be entirely relevant. I'm going to send this off to some professional editors and get their feedback on what I've done so far. Now that's quite expensive, but I deliberately said, even though it's expensive, I'm going to send it to two different editors because I've got no idea whether their feedback is going to be any good. I've got no yardstick against which to check them. But more importantly, if I find that only one of these editors comes back with a point, maybe that's something I can think about but don't have to feel so strongly about. Whereas if it's a point that both of them bring up, then I've clearly put a foot wrong here, and I need to think very seriously about those points. Which is, I'm not saying you should put your tagline through professional editors. I'm just saying the more different opinions you can get, the better, because then if the same point is coming up time and time again, you know that you've got an issue there that needs addressing. Whereas if it's just one out of half a dozen people, and you can change something if you want to, or it's probably safer to ignore than if everybody was coming up with that.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely want. This is what I'm gonna say, and I don't want anybody to get their feelings hurt here. But don't ask your friends, your real life friends, to help you, because
Mhm.
most of the time they don't won't take you seriously. My friends, when I first started writing the script, I sent them the script and asked for some feedback, and they never even bothered to finish reading it. I waited like 4 or 5 days, and I was like, "Hey, did you read the script?" It's like, "Oh, well, I started to, but I didn't finish it." Or one guy just said, "You need to be more descriptive," and it's like, "On what?" You gave no actual feedback, and they're just not going to take you seriously. Find some like-minded people in groups like David. David has helped me a lot, and it's not because we're buddies, which we have a friendship through this now. I really like David and
You cut
respect
me to
David.
the quick.
Well, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I do,
Uh,
I do.
but like if we were just friends and this was unrelated, and I asked you, I wouldn't. You probably wouldn't even. That's just the way it is. You don't take your friends seriously. Find people like-minded that you know or have had plenty of experiences with, and get them to help you. That's the best thing about some of the groups I've joined, is there's plenty of people there who really genuinely want to help you.
Yeah, yeah. And the good thing about the groups, for example, the Facebook groups that have grown out of Comicsgate, is it doesn't even have to be somebody who wants to write themselves, because they are comics readers. So you can go to them and say, you can pick half a dozen people at random if you want out of one of those groups and say, not necessarily the whole script, but particularly if you're thinking of honing your one paragraph synopsis or whatever, say, hey, how does this sound? Does this excite you? Would you read a comic that if this was the selling point? Um, and yeah, some will kind of say yes, some will say no, some won't answer. But you're talking to people who actually want to read comics, and their input as readers is as important, if not more important, than the input of somebody else who's a writer.
Exactly. Um, Continuing our progress to this. Once you got your Indiegogo set up and ready to go, make sure.
Sorry, can I
Yeah,
add
go
one
ahead.
more point to that last point? In terms of
Yeah,
getting other people to check what you've done, and I know this is looking ahead, Doug. We haven't got there yet on ours, but when you've got everything finished and ready to go to the printers, get another half a dozen people to read the whole damn thing again. I have, when I did my graphic novel, it's 140 odd pages, two volumes, each of them about 140 pages. I checked it God knows how many times, 100 times more, sent it all off to the printers. It was only when it came back from the printers I started spotting the typos and the spelling. There were only two or three. I'm exaggerating. It's not like it was awful, but it was just one of those things where you look at it and you think, how did I not see it? All those times I checked it and I missed this. So do get other people to check it. I know you're not at this stage yet, but yeah, the checking needs to happen at every single stage of the project.
I
Sorry,
agree.
go ahead.
I think once you get to a certain point and you're reading it, your mind you already know the story, so your mind just starts glancing over it,
Mm.
and so that's how you miss those typos because what's in your head and what's on the paper don't really match up, but you're just skimming through it really quickly. I'm
Exactly.
really bad for that.
Well, it's exactly that. You've read it 99 times before, and when you read it the 100th time, you think you're looking for errors, but really you're reading what you think is already there.
Yeah, exactly. But now we'll go on to the next part. Once you've got your page up and ready to go, make sure that your goal is not something, ridiculous. If this is the first project that you're running, this is the first book you're going to do, nobody knows who you are. You have a moderate following, people. Don't try to get $20,000. It's not going to happen. I mean, it's nice to. It might happen, if you just have the best product in the world and you can get people to sell it for you. But don't be too. Don't set your sights too high because if you don't hit them, it's going to hurt you. You're going to, I've seen it happen with a few people. You get upset. You need to keep your goals realistic. You might blow up. You might just be asking for $5,000. You might blow up and get $100,000. But you need to be.
Just to put this in perspective, the biggest Indiegogo we've had is Ethan, yeah, 600 odd thousand. I mean, admittedly, he did a second launch, but 600,000 he's raised. I don't know if anybody can remember what his original target was. 8,000 he was getting. He put on there,
Exactly.
and he wasn't sure he was going to get it. This is a man with 25 years experience in comics. He had, I think, at that stage it must have been 40, 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, and he was nervous about hitting 8,000. He was not sure. And when he launched it, for those of us who watched it live, and I'm sure a lot of us did, you could almost hear the tears in his voice, when he realized he was going to hit it within the first half hour or something.
Yeah.
But that's the attitude you have to have when you go into it. Set your sights low, go for the minimum amount you need to get the project done. Maybe even if you can afford to top it up later, maybe even go slightly under what you really need. And so that you will at an early stage hopefully get a bit of a fillip. Hey, we've hit this, or in your case, Doug, we're nearly halfway. It's a great feeling to see that gap closing. If you've set yourself 100,000 target to start with, it's going to be a long time before you get a buzz out of that, even if you ever do. and
Yeah.
and and you're setting yourself up. You're making it more likely you're going to miss the target. Obviously, I think one of the things we haven't said a lot about on any of the campaigns that I've seen is success breeds success. I think, let's say you do set an 8,000 target or a 4,000 target. Um, and then you hit that quite early in the campaign. Somebody else coming to look at that can then think, hey, look, this must be quite a good project, or people must trust this guy because there's a lot of people ahead of me already put their money into it. If you've set your target at 40, 50,000 and you're halfway through the campaign and you're still at 4 or 5, people are, or even if you're at 30, people, oh, I don't know, this might never actually happen. And then will I get my money back if it doesn't? How's this going to work? It's you want people to see that it's doing well, and the lower you set your target in that sense, the better your chance of conveying that to other people.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
no,
interrupted.
no, no. That was an excellent point. You definitely need to be realistic about your goals, and like with our book, I've had a lot of people tell me, well, you guys should have did a few more pages and asked for more money. I've had people say we shouldn't be selling anything under $15, but you know, I want, I've talked to these guys, and this is figured up. What's going to cost me to pay them for their hard work, and these guys are doing a lot of hard work, and it's going to pay to get this book printed and shipped. I'm not shooting to make a whole bunch of money. This is something I love, and I want to get out there. But you know, I know there's a lot of projects out there that are asking 15, 20, $25. I know there's a lot of people out there saying I can't afford that anymore. You know, so you need to make sure that your price isn't too high. I've heard that you need to make sure it's not too low. I think you need to be as fair about it as you can and still set a goal to make sure that everybody gets paid. Because I would love to make, ten, $15,000 and give these guys some bonuses for all their hard work. But if we don't get there, at least I'll know that I get to pay them, at least what we agreed upon. So don't set your goals too high, too lofty, because in the end you're going to hurt yourself, and you may even hurt the relationship between you and your team. What do you think about that, David?
I don't think you're going to hurt your relationship with this team. I think you've got a good crowd here. From what I've seen of Jeff,
Hang on just a second. I'm going to run up
yeah.
here. I've got something in the stove that I forgot about. So I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, just so we don't have dead air then while Doug's away. Yeah, and the team is vital. And keeping a good working relationship between everybody on the team is so important. It's one of the most frustrating things about putting a comic together where you have 4 or 5 different people all reliant on each other. It is the fact that they are reliant on each other. You're not master of your own destiny. You do have to make sure everybody is in step with everybody else, and everybody's personality is gelling. You can't just rely on them getting on, unless you're prepared to help make them work as a team. But at the same time, that's one of the strengths. That's one of the strengths. It's a weakness and a strength. The fact that you are a team means that as long as you can get the team working and pulling for each other, um, it's great for everybody to know that they're not alone. The artist isn't. I mean, most of the work that's done on comics, whether it's the writing or the artwork or the lettering or the coloring, it's somebody sitting alone somewhere in a room, in a studio if they're a big name creator, or probably just in their front room with a light box on their knee or something, or in the dining room if that's the biggest table and they've got a big piece of paper. You're on your own. It's a very solitary experience, and so encouraging the team to work together, encouraging them to stay in touch with each other, getting them to pull for the project on social media so that they feel really involved with it as well as you. That's great, because believe me, the person who's going to be most looking for that feedback is going to be the project manager, who's probably going to be the writer in most cases. But believe me, if you're the artist, if you're even the letterer or the colorist, I remember Brett Smith saying this as the colorist on Jawbreakers. Um, they love it. They want feedback. They're people. They've put in a lot of hard work. They want to know that people are loving the project just as much as the guy whose face is out front most of the time. So yeah, make if you're putting one of these projects out there, make sure everybody on the team is involved. Let them have contact with the, assuming they want it. Let them have contact with the audience, with the potential buyers as well. Anything like that will help. Will help the team gel. As I say, I keep making this analogy, but think of it like a rock band. If you haven't got the guitarist and the drummer in there, even if they don't feel like they're adding much to the interviews, if they feel, it's far better that they're there than to have them feeling they're being left out. Let the crowd see them. Let them know that people appreciate the whole team. There you go, Jeff. I feel Doug. I feel some dead air for you.
Well, thank you. I got my stuff out of the oven. Didn't even burn the house
down. Next time.
But I agree with your point there. The last part I heard of it, if all the team works and gets to promote and everything.
I was just saying what a horrible boss you were before that.
I probably am a horrible boss.
Not at all. Not at all.
You guys will make one of those movies, Horrible Bosses, and I'll be. No, like I don't know, like you saying, like a band. It's. I've been in so many bands where the rest of the band was completely disinterested in everything, and it was such a struggle to get them to work. Like this, our group, our team, is fantastic because it's like everybody's always got ideas. Everybody's, it's like, well, what can we do? What can we do? Everybody's ready to jump in. They're ready to throw out ideas. They're ready to help. They're ready to promote. It's awesome. It's the best. It's the best. It's the best rock band I've ever been a part of. So where were we before I took off to keep from burning the house down?
Well, I spoke a lot about teams, so it must have been something to do with the team. Feedback. Where were we?
We were talking. I was talking about not setting your goals too high and stuff.
That was it. Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I know how to go into team. You talked about paying people and giving bonuses.
Oh yeah,
and that was close to my heart, so I thought I'd mention that again.
Yeah, like I set our goal to where we could get everything done, but I keep really hoping that we can make some more money.
Yeah.
If we don't hear, if this book gets funded, I only look for the next book to be even better. I want to continue to make a good product. And I believe that I really hope the people that get this, get our book will enjoy it. And I think they will. I think we've got a pretty good product on our hands.
Well, I do. I love it. I read the script and I liked the script. I saw the artwork and I thought that was I loved that. I mean, you've seen some of the pages or some of the pictures from the comic I'm working on. I love it when an artist has an individual style, something that people are not going to see every day in the mainstream, and yet it's still very high quality artwork. And I think Jeff has that. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's one thing. I love it when you see an artist and it's that artist. Like, and I believe if this takes off, people will start seeing Jeff's art and go, "Well, that's Jeff. I know Jeff. That's his art."
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, it's a very distinctive style. I'm sure somebody knows more about art than I do will say, "Oh, well, actually, it's not that original." I can think of somebody back in 1922 or something. But I mean, I look at it and I just think, "Wow, this is so original." It's got you could look at that 10 years from now, and I'm sure there won't be anybody else that's doing that. Well, unless they've all decided it's so great they start copying him, of course. But I love it. It's just it's not like anybody. I can't think of anybody who draws like that, and it's a bit like I could almost imagine the way people look back these days. Then they look at people like Aubrey Beardsley, who did the sort of illustrations for the Oscar Wilde plays, and you look at them now, and you just look at them, and you think, well, it can't be anybody but Aubrey Beardsley. Nobody else draws like that now. Nobody else drew like that then. It's unique, and I think although Jeff's style is nothing like Aubrey Beardsley's, it has that quality of, yeah, this guy's got his own. He's putting his own personality into it.
Yeah, I love that. I love artists to just do their own thing. And Jeff, I'm gonna have to keep Jeff sequestered away from the world so other people won't hire him. It's like, no, no, Jeff's busy. You stay away from Jeff. He's working
Yeah,
on Lone Wolf issue 452 right now.
it's like EVS. Like Ethan's got his colorist locked in the basement, I think. So he's terrified the mainstream are going to look at his work and sneak him away.
Yes. uh, one thing, like our team is just a bunch of really cool guys. I think. I don't know. I can't imagine doing any of this stuff without you and Jeff and Cal. It just wouldn't seem right at this point, you know.
I understand that completely. Again, when I did my graphic novel, and I'm sorry to keep harking back to it, but it's my only sort of one big comic project that I did. Um, the artist I had at the beginning, he was supposed to do the whole book, but it became too much for him. He was doing too much. He was doing the pencils and the inks and the letters and the colours, and as I say, and it was a huge project. And he got to the halfway point, I think chapter 7 or chapter 8, and he basically said, I can't do anymore, David. I'm sorry. I sort of tried to stay the course. But by then, of course, that was about 4 years after we started. Um, and he was putting all this time into it, all this work into it. He was getting to the point where he was becoming more proficient and more well known himself.
Hmm.
He started to win a couple of small awards in India, getting proper paid work as opposed to the pittance I was able to afford. And it was just too much. He couldn't keep up with all the work there was involved. And when he said he couldn't do it, I mean, I understood exactly where he was coming from. I mean, I understood he was burning out, but at the same time, I had this pit in my stomach. Where on earth am I going to find another artist? I mean, this artist is now he's part of the project. I associate him as being there. His style is such that I cannot imagine anyone else drawing this book now, and yet I still had half the book to go or half the story to go. Now I was lucky. I'd met a few other artists in the intervening years, and I put out an advert saying, essentially saying, I wanted somebody who could bring their own style to it, but that style should not be totally um, out of step with what had gone before. I didn't want there to, it can be very jarring when you're following a comic series and suddenly the art style changes dramatically from one chapter to the next, or
Yeah.
one issue to the next. I tend to think of it in chapters because I'm a trades guy. But I didn't want that jarring sensation of people suddenly feeling like they'd dropped into the middle of another book. But at the same time, I did want they had to have the freedom, obviously, to use their own style. And I looked and I looked and I looked and I couldn't find anybody. And then finally, in desperation, I wrote to one of these artists who I'd come across through other channels, and I just said, "Look, I can't afford to pay you what you're really worth, what you must be used to charging for the sort of work you do. But I love your work. This is what I'm looking for. This is the style I want it to not be too jarring with. Do you think you'd be interested in it?" He said, "Oh, you never guess what?" He said, "I was just about to write to you and say, how would you like to do a project together? um, because I love your writing and I'd really enjoy being part of that book there." And it was just one of those things, as you say, you've made the contact, you've put out the feelers, you've made the connection so that when I went to him, he was already primed and ready. And I just fell off my chair, basically. It was like, I couldn't believe my luck
Yeah.
because, and long circuitous way to come back to what you were saying at the beginning. I just could not imagine at that point. I could not have imagined doing that book with anybody else. And as it turned out, the second guy was also great. And by the end, I couldn't imagine doing it with anybody but him. But at that halfway point, it was like my world had just collapsed because I just thought, even if I can find another good artist, and I did have had a few people that sent me submissions, which were far more sort of typical superhero type work, and would have been very good in their own right. But it no longer fitted what I felt the book was about because I got so used to this other guy's work on it. He was now part of the book as much as I was. Sorry, I rambled.
You got nothing to be sorry for. I mean, like you were saying, one thing that actually made me think of, make sure that if you're going to work with somebody, there's somebody that's dedicated to doing the work and that it's something that they're into. Because if you definitely don't want to lose somebody halfway through or get your 3 or 4 pages of promo work done and then they disappear.
Mm.
That would be terrible, and it would leave you in a rough spot.
Yeah, and that's because there's a few projects I think even Jawbreakers, it was basically done on the basis that Richard paid John for like the first 10 pages or something, so that he had a pitch to put out there. But I think that I'm not sure they had the money at the beginning though to see the project through. They may have done, I can't remember. But I mean, if you think John is a professional artist, I mean the rates he would have been charging and that Richard would have been paying him, I'm not sure they if they got halfway through and the money hadn't come through, I'm not sure Richard would have been able to pay John, for the whole book. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
he would. I don't know. I'm speculating here, but I do think a lot of these projects seem to be done on the basis of the project originator will fund enough pages up front to make sure there's a pitch there and there are some sample pages on the site. But whether they can continue and finish the book and continue to pay the artist does depend on the project being fulfilled. And as you say, if you've got somebody who is really committed to the project, you can probably do a deal with, if the worst comes to the worst, you can probably still do a deal with the artist and say, look, okay, we didn't get what we thought, but I'm going to pay you this anyway. And then we're going to pitch it to half a dozen publishers. If you stick with it, we'll pitch it to Alterna, we'll pitch it to whoever. And obviously you'll get the rest of the money and more if we get successful and do a deal that way. But yeah, you've got to be very careful about not careful, that's the wrong word, but you've got to, if you've got somebody who is committed to the project, as certainly if they are as committed to the project as you are, that's going to count for a lot.
yeah, definitely. Let's see. We were talking about money and whatnot. Make sure when you get your Indiegogo, when you're starting it up and everything, that you have. I've heard only offer a few perks. I've heard offer lots of perks. I don't know what to tell you on that. But offer some cool stuff. So far, like in our perks, we've had people. There's just a little bit of everything. Some people will go for the big stuff. Some people go for the little stuff. But I think we've pulled more backers just because we offer the cheap thing. They're like, well, I'll pay $5 or $6, and get this book. Because some people tell me, well, pay, go $25, and then people, they'll if that's your lowest tier, then you're guaranteed they'll pay $25. Some people don't have $25 to spend on
Mm-hmm.
on these books right now. I didn't want to put people on that spot, and then at that point, offering a $25 book, you're going to have to expand your budget. You're going to have to shoot to be able to pay for the extra artwork and the extra lettering and the extra coloring. So keep that in mind. If you want to make an affordable book, make sure you budget for it. I mean, like I've got stretch goals that if we hit a certain amount, that will increase the page rate. But that's because that amount will allow me to pay Jeff and David to get that work done.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I was.
oh, sorry, you're reading the chat, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I was reading the chat, but go ahead now.
Um, sorry, you telling me you were reading the chat has thrown me off. What my interruption? What was I going to say? I was going to say yes. In terms of designing your tiers, that again, bear in mind. I mean, with yours, you had a specific objective in mind, which is you wanted this to appeal to people who kept saying, "We'd love to back more of these, but we just don't have $25 to throw away on every book that comes out. We need some lower tier projects out there." And you made a specific point of going after that market. You've done really well. I mean, is it over 60? Is it 60 something backers you've got now? Because
I
people
believe
have
it's
been able
64.
60, yeah. So people, I mean, that's working really well. And you also have to be realistic. I remember again when Richard did his, he wasn't sure where to set this, obviously, and I think his somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong. I think his highest tier was something like $100 or something. Um, and but then when Ethan came along, and I looked at his, and of course he's a different person. He's got this huge personality. He's got this huge subscriber base. He's got this really impressive track record in the industry. And I think he was putting on there like $250 tiers, and for that you get a page of the artwork, and for this you get drawn into the book. And I just looked at these tiers on day one. I mean, I was there on day one. Don't get me wrong. I backed within the first sort of couple of minutes of launch, but I was looking at some of the tiers, and I thought, how many of these are you going to sell? This is crazy stuff. But of course, people ate them up. I mean, to have a piece of Ethan Van Sciver artwork, I completely underestimated that. Um, but that's the difference. We're not all Ethan. You can't have every project with $100, $200 tiers. They're not all going to get that. Some of us, most of us, 99% of us. Again, I have to say, these people we're appealing to, they don't know us from Adam. They can see a sample of the artwork, which is great. They know whether or not they're going to get decent artwork in the book. They've never read anything I've written. They've never read anything you've written. Could be the worst story in the world, or it could be the best story but badly written. It's nobody knows. They are taking a gamble, and to take a gamble on somebody they don't know, so a product they don't know how good or otherwise it's going to be. Um, they're not going to throw 50, or one or two might, but you're not going to get sort of huge numbers of people saying, I'm willing to spend $50 on that. And for some of us, I mean, for those of us not in the States particularly, even a $20 book is effectively costing us $50 because we've got to add that postage on as well, that shipping. And that shipping is a killer for the international market. So when you're setting your tiers, bear that in mind. A $20 tier isn't $20 for everybody. It's $20 to the US, which is great because that's 80% probably of your market. But it's really $40 or $50 for somebody overseas. So keeping your tiers low, it's a juggling act, a balancing act, and we'll all get better at estimating this. But you want it low enough to bring in a large number of backers and high enough to maximize the amount you make. And there is a trade-off, but there's no point thinking everything has to be big just because I'll raise more money that way. It's like if I've got 60 backers, like you've got 64 backers. Oh, if I'd only put in $100 tier, I'd have, no, you'd probably have nothing. You'd probably have, because everybody would say, I'm not going to spend $100 on this book by somebody I've never heard of.
Exactly.
But I think your strategy has been great so far. I mean, to get to 64 backers at this stage in the campaign, um, it's great, and people are loving the idea that they can actually be part of this. I mean, up until for most of the projects, if all you wanted to throw at it was $5, you could still do that, but you get nothing in return. It was just one of these perks that said, oh, it wasn't a perk, it was just, make a contribution without getting anything. And I'm sure some people have, but to be able to say, well, even if you can only come in at that level, you still get something out of it. You still get a comic. I think you're creating a lot of interest in there, which is going to help a lot of projects going forward. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Uh, like that's one thing too. Like that's probably the only reason I offered the digital only. I'm not a big fan of the digital, the PDFs and stuff like that. But when I got to talking about it with people and thinking about it, I wanted people that liked the idea and liked the story, even if they weren't able to pay the shipping for it. Like say Australia or whatever, you pay $25 to ship a book. If they couldn't afford that, then I wanted them to still be able to feel a part of it and to get the story and get the artwork, even if it's only digitally. They still a part. It it saves a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of hassle.
Mm.
you know.
And again, there are different markets out there, different audiences out there. I mean, I'm like you. I like the hard copy. I mean, even though it means paying the extra for the international postage, I would much rather have a book in my hand than be reading it digital. But um, a lot of people, they're reading on their Kindles, they're reading on their handheld devices, you know. And so to get a PDF that they can get on the train on the commute to work and read that way, a lot of them are quite happy to do that.
Yeah, and if it'll get them to read my book, then I'm more than happy to provide one. You know, but like I said originally, I didn't even want to do one. I'm old school. I read comics on my phone and stuff, but it's only because like they offer like an unlimited service where you can read books, and I read a lot of stuff that I would never actually buy, but I've always been interested in, and so that's opened my mind up to different artists and different books and different characters that I never would have considered before.
Mm.
And maybe the people that did buy this for $5, you know, just the digital, maybe the next time around, maybe when we do the second part, they'll go, well, you know, I really like that first part. I'll just go ahead and buy issue 1 and 2 and get the
Mm.
physical this time.
Yeah, 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 and also, I don't know whether this is true because I haven't thought it completely through in terms of how it works within an Indiegogo setup. But what I found with my graphic novel was I made it available as a proper, like, thick 100 odd page or two volumes, 200 odd page volumes, like a trade paperback type book, two of those for the full story. But also made each of them available as PDFs. Um, now, the book itself is quite expensive. Each of the books, I think it's because of the cost of printing a full color book. It's I think they sell. I forgot now on Indie Planet. I think they sell for 20 something dollars each. Um, but on the PDF, you can get that. I put that on at £3.50, £3.50. You know, because I got no printing costs, and I actually make a bigger profit on that digital £3.50 than I do on a $25 paper book. So the advantage of the digital as well as having certain advantages to the readers out there who might want that, it should, in theory, I touch wood, I think you may find that the more people you get buying it on digital, the better that is for you too. You actually make more money that way, even though the price may be lower. Um, you actually make more money that way just because your costs are so much lower.
Exactly. I I would have actually went cheaper on the digital, but it still helps. You know, everybody giving that for the digital, the
I, I,
$5.
I don't think you could have gone much cheaper.
Well, to get you and Jeff and Cal some money or something, you know, I needed to keep it in the $5 range.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's probably about as cheap as you can get, you know,
yeah.
for an indie book.
Yeah, and it's a price people are used to paying for a comic anyway. So if you end up with just the basic comic, they're paying the same as they would have to pay if they walked into a comic book shop and bought it there. If you actually manage to get to the tiers where you're adding extra pages in, then they're getting a lot of value for that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Uh, Sorry, I was reading the chat and stuff again.
Yeah, yeah, I realize.
Uh, but like we were saying with that, you know, keep your mind open to offering things that you might not think about offering at first. Because, like I said, I was against the digital book, but it just makes more sense in the long run. Um, Also, keep your mind open to other products people might like. We're doing T-shirts. People love T-shirts, especially if you can get them printed cheap and still make money. You know, print T-shirts, maybe do stickers and things like that, or definitely throw in some bonus materials because if these people are going and buying books in comic shops, they're only getting the books. They're not getting any bonus materials. If you throw them some extra stuff in, you know, just for fun, things like that, they're going to remember that those little details really help people.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll give you an example, if I may, outside of the
Go ahead.
comics industry. My son is an artist, more in the sort of fine arts rather than the commercial side. Um, he sells, I won't tell you what he sells his prints for. You can go to his website if you want to look it up. But he's got to a point now where he's making a fair amount on his commissions and on selling prints and things. But every time he sends out a print, somebody goes to his website, they order a print, they see the picture they want, they click on it, he has it all properly bound up and sent off. But he also always puts in there like it's like it's a very small piece of cardboard, probably about the size of a business card, maybe slightly bigger. And with every one he sends out, he'll do a little sketch on that and sign it and put it for free inside the package. And people have bought this because of the main print that they're buying, and they love that. They get it framed and that. But he gets letters back saying, putting in that little extra card, I've now got like two pieces of your work assigned. Just that little touch, it takes him 5 minutes to do one of these little sketches on a business card type piece of cardboard or whatever it is. And yet, just giving them a little something they weren't expecting, something extra, it shows that you care about them as customers, and
Yeah,
and it's
and
appreciated.
that means a lot to people.
It does. It does. The fact that people would actually take the trouble to write back, or just because of that, if they'd just got the print, they wouldn't have written back and said, "Hey, thanks for that," even though that was why they really bought the product in the first place. But to get this little extra something, however small, it's like, "Hey, thanks for that. You obviously care about me as a client. I'll be looking at your website again."
Yeah, exactly. And
Mm.
man, I don't think people, I don't know if I can convey how much I appreciate every person that's actually backed our project. Uh, if I could do something for every one of them, I would. So any little way you can show appreciation or make these people feel like they're a part of your journey and your community, you need to try to do that.
Mhm.
Well, David, is there anything else you can think about running a campaign?
Well, not at this stage because we're still in the middle of it. But oh, yeah, actually, yeah, the one thing the thing that we're facing at the moment, well, you more than me, but the campaign generally, the campaign generally is facing, and this is something which I know Richard mentioned at the beginning, and a few of the other guys, of the big guys, have mentioned at the beginning. Plan for the middle of the campaign. It's like you are going to put so much effort into your first 2, 3, 4 days. You will, fingers crossed anyway, hopefully, you will get a splurge of orders at the beginning. And we can't vouch for this yet, but from what we've been told by everyone else, there is usually a splurge of orders at the end as well. But it sags in the middle. It is going to sag in the middle, and you need to, well, you need to have a plan, but if you haven't, then you're going to have to come up with one halfway through of how to actually keep interest alive in that middle period, how to keep orders coming in. Now, I know what I remember. Oh, I say no. I remember what Richard did was he didn't announce the stretch goals up front. I know that seems to have gone by the wayside now. Nearly everybody else has, but his the way he did it was to say, "Hey, if we get to this level, I will tell you what the next stretch goal is going to get what it's going to be. If we do this, I'll announce who the artist is going to be. If we do this, I'll announce who the colorist is going to be." And it's just, I'm not saying that necessarily is the best way to do it, but you need to have some sort of plan, whether you have it at the beginning or whether you start thinking about it after you've started. I'd say it's better if you can to have at least an idea at the beginning, so that you're not scrambling around halfway through. But you are going to see from everything we hear, there is going to be this the campaign is going to flag slightly after the first few days, and you want some way to keep people's levels of interest high, something else to offer them, not necessarily something physical, but a bit of news, a bit of something that's going to make, oh, I didn't think of that. Hey, that's interesting. Oh, I can't wait till I learn that piece of information. Um, and that's just something to build into the campaign. As I say, if you may not have everything thought out at the beginning, but have an idea in your mind if you can, or be prepared to think on your feet. Some people are very good at just improvising as they go along. I think with a number of listeners, EVS has, for example, he was able, he would see from his chats, he'd have a dozen people suddenly getting excited about an idea, it's okay. Well, if we hit such and such, then I'll do that. Not everybody's going to have that kind of feedback as they go along. So just try and think of different ways. I know you came up with one. You haven't mentioned it, I don't think, unless you mentioned it before I came on. Is your secret perk?
Exactly. I haven't mentioned it, but it's in the description on the video.
Mention it now. Mention it now.
Yeah. I am doing some secret perks for the campaign. If you don't follow me on Twitter, make sure that you do at DG310. As the days go by up until Halloween, I will be offering secret perks. And the secret perks, what they do is they'll combine 2 or 3 different things, or there'll be a discount. Like today, the secret perk, you get a copy of the regular book, you get the newsprint book, you get the digital copy, you get a T-shirt, and you get your name on a special thank you page in the book. And all that is for $45 plus shipping wherever you are in the world. But that's a discounted tier, because just to get your name in the book and get a regular copy of the book, I have it $50. So you're getting a discount on some extra stuff, but I'm only going to run this for a day or two. If nobody, bites, I'll pull it down, and in a day I'll have something else. But keep your eyes open. And if you've already backed the book, you can get a refund and jump on one of these secret perks. But the secret perks, like I said, they're only going to last a short time, and there's only 5 of those today. So you better get on it while you can if you want it, because it's not going to last. And also, I have a banjo.
which is a must for every campaign here on in, I think.
Exactly. If you want to get on Doug TeNaples' show, play a banjo. However you want.
Take it away, Doug.
Well, I believe that's enough of us talking about streams and all this stuff. So I'll play us a little tune, and we'll go.
We should do another one of these, though. I mean, this has been great, letting people know what it's like setting up a campaign at the beginning and getting to the halfway stage, which is where we are now. Might be good to do one near the end as well, just to see how much more we've learned or what mistakes we've made at that stage, and let people in on that too.
Exactly. I think it is a good idea. I know a lot of people are getting ready to launch campaigns and whatnot. So if you have any questions, just shoot me a question. I'll probably actually do another one of these in a few days, just to get see if there's any interest in other people maybe coming on with me, or wanting to ask questions. You can always ask questions in the chat. But we're gonna sign out for now. I'll play us out on the banjo, and we'll see you next time. Any parting words of advice there, David?
I think you've covered it, Doug. I think you've done very well. In fact, in terms of advice from me, I've just been, as I say, taking notes all the way through, taking advice from you for when I do mine. But that's a little way away at the moment.
Well, everybody, I hope you all have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you later. See yous all. Y'all come back now. You hear?